Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday. Here we are, DebateSensei. We got Tim CV from Visolution, San Diego State. I am Jared Kabika Miller, professor of communications, debate coach. All right. And Matt is off starting his own worm farm right now. He's got
he's got big dreams and a bigger heart. I hope the best for him, and I hope the worms aren't mean to him. Like last time, we just can't handle another one of those.
Speak of the devil. Here we go. Hey,
hello,
chap. You have worms.
I do.
No other way to put it. There's literally no other way to put it.
What's going on, guys?
Hey,
Well,
man,
I
we are
feel
all dressed
terrifically
up.
underdressed.
Yes.
Not really. I mean, you still have a It sounds really white for you to be saying that you're underdressed with a button-up collared shirt.
Pink shirt, that is.
Yeah.
It doesn't have sleeves, and you don't have jackets on like
Jackets thing, I get it.
Some 17th century duel.
Well, we're doing our best Sopranos impression right now.
Give me some of that spaghetti. There you go. How's this?
All right.
So we've got a pretty cool topic.
Yeah. And it's
National
very
scene.
timely because National Speech and Debate Association, they got their tournament coming up. Which one is this? This is the LD topic?
This is the public forum topic. But
Public
this is
forum
the nationals topic. So this is what they've been working on for. This one they usually get a little bit more prep time because they announce it right after districts. So you've got like the most time to really work on it. Plus it's summer for, some schools are still in, but it's summer for most, and the tournament's not for a bit. So they've got some time to really work on it and dial in, cases. And so they try and make the topics bigger. And this one I think is timely and it's a good hefty topic.
Yeah. Luckily we got ourselves a public forum expert.
Oh, yeah. Who's that? That must be your department. No, you know what? I did some public forum, and I think with Tim, for those of you who don't know, each tournament has its own resolution. So, and they release them kind of in varying amounts of time before the tournament. And I think, Tim, what you're saying is this tournament, they give plenty of time, the most time, a lot of time to prep. Generally, it's about 3 months. What is it? I don't know exactly.
Normally, it's the high school clip is typically a month at a time. So they announce the topic just after the general tournaments happen for the previous one. Oh man, what I didn't realize? It is 10 years ago now that I was at that tournament at NSDA Nationals for Public Forum.
Wow,
I'm old. So that's the thing. And Jared, I can only imagine how you feel.
Well,
Maybe 20 years ago, this tournament was in Dallas, Texas, and it was a trip. It was 111 degrees at night, and it was a whole thing. So, yeah, there was different times. We were debating the internet. Is it a fad? And we did pretty well.
Apple stock. Should I buy it? Yeah. Should have bought it.
It's a fad. So this one, we've got social media.
Yeah.
In the United States, more specifically, social media is beneficial for democratic values. Try that one more time. In the United States, social media is beneficial for democratic values. Well, at least we have an attorney among us. What are democratic values? If you had to give your best lawyer answer.
Democratic values. It's pretty vague. Let's start with that. But yes, democratic values, I guess that means democratic could mean a government or a party. So there's some ambiguity there, I guess.
Yeah, more the general concept of democracy.
Yeah, or the Democratic Party, meaning, not the Republican Party, that other party.
Man.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, what do you guys think? Even right here, we're talking about debate land. This is a definition. You could define this. I guess.
I usually, democratic values, I go with the big three: liberty, equality, justice.
Okay, there you go. There's your definition.
It's like you just kind of list them. You're like, if you want to add to this list, yeah, I guess go ahead, but
sure,
that's what I'm going for.
Democratic values. Yeah, the whole should govern.
Yeah. So it's kind of like operationally defining it, perhaps.
Yeah, so definitely you're going to define some of these terms. What is it? Beneficial, was that one of them, I think? Or
is beneficial for democratic or values,
Yeah,
so
okay.
social media, here's a question for you. Is Reddit social media?
I would tend to think so. I mean, it's like, I've talked about this with people. You know, a lot of social media that we think of is very centered towards the user, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on Reddit, it's kind of, in my opinion, it's more about like content that has nothing to do with the user. I mean, I guess sometimes
it feels different. Like Reddit feels fundamentally different from Instagram.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think user created is the important part there, right?
Okay.
And so, like, that would actually be part of my definition for social media. That like the digital and online component. I think everyone can agree to that, but it's the user created content that is central to the thing. You know, it's like if you could turn. So that's why, like, on a news article, even if there's comments at the bottom, that wouldn't be like, that's not user created content. It's like the website is paying to have that content created. You know what I mean? And featured and curated and things like that. And so while there are sort of, you know, linguistic differences and gray areas between those two, I think that those are at least useful enough terms that not everything online is social media.
Yeah. Okay. So, right. Like if I am a writer for the New York Times and I write something and it goes posted on New York Times website, you wouldn't consider that social media just because people could comment under it or something like that.
Yeah, even with the comment, like the comment kind of, that's what creates the little gray area.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of the New York Times website is about edited, curated content that they paid for, you know.
So the reason I ask that is that, in my opinion, becomes a pretty big sticking point. If I am on the affirmative side and I'm having to say that social media is good for democratic values, I think that the best versions of social media come in those that are the least regulated, the most content, like actual thought oriented. So longer form, I guess, is maybe part of that. So I would say that like Snapchat counts as social media. I don't think that that's necessarily helpful for democratic values. Instagram, similarly, like you can post stuff on there, but it's much more follower oriented, right? Like it is about the person and it's photo oriented. So even if you were to jam in a text post, you're not getting much text out there. Yeah. And then the comments, just, you know, as real estate on a view, right, are a very tiny piece. It's really not conducive for long form discussion. Mm-hmm. So if I'm thinking that democratic values come around to like the equal sharing of ideas or something like that, I think Reddit is a really awesome.
Well, hold on. You know, nudity is it's been designated speech, man. So you know, Snapchat, people sending nudes everywhere. That's about as democratic value as I can think of. The more I think about it,
I think you and Anthony Weiner have a lot to talk about.
Well, you know, I'm not saying you can't commit crimes which are very not democratic using that software. I'm just saying, you know, using the functional definition of liberty, which is pretty vague, you know, you could make an argument that
okay, so we're
even that
definitions a little bit, but let's think about a criteria, and that
your criteria.
I think that I was kind of, you know, toying with it, and one of the things I've been stuck on recently is about creating unique criteria.
Yeah.
For debates.
Just like biasly advantageous for your side?
Not really. No. In fact, quite the opposite. But just really unique and custom built for the topic. And I kind of like this one. All right. And so for the social media one, I said the criteria will be that if I can prove that in the long run, social media will fuel global democratic reforms, I win. Now, if you can prove that it won't do that, or that it will do the opposite, like it'll lead to more totalitarian reforms, then you win. And you see how that's what I love about those criteria is that, like, you don't automatically win just by stating the criteria.
Net benefits, moving on.
Yeah. Right.
Jared, what you just did was like critical, I think. I mean, so many people, so many new debaters, everybody, they're just like, yeah, net benefits. Whoever wins is, you know, it's
right. That's the script.
And you walk away. But if you, the more specific you get, or or the more unique you get, whatever you want to call it. I think it's really, even if it's really slanted your way, what you just did, Jed, where you're like, you lay out, well, if I can prove this, then I win. But then you also kind of lay out their ground because
right. You need to define that too.
Yeah, and it helps kind of front load any abusive arguments or something. Where, like I told them, the more sense it makes, that also helps with the round. But just make sure that you kind of lay out for them exactly what they have to do to win, and
making it somewhat square. So Jared, question on that, like democratic reforms, and of course it doesn't have to be the exact wording, but I'm thinking on that one, like that means taking a country from something non-democratic towards something democratic, right?
Well, not necessarily. It would be like you compare before and after.
Okay, and ask if it became more.
Yeah, it's like you could be plenty democratic beforehand, but if there's more democracy even afterwards, then you still win.
The other side isn't just totalitarian, right? Like,
just more. Yeah, just the direction.
So less democratic.
Yeah. So just comparatively, right? Okay. It's like, so today becomes like the standard that, it's like you take a test right now, and now we do a post-test, and if it leans this way or that way, that's how you decide. And so, of course, it's not like this absolute measurable thing, but that's what makes it a debate.
Yeah.
Like, if we only had things that you could quantify, then debate wouldn't be an activity.
If I could just do a math problem and show you're wrong, then there's no reason to talk about any of this.
Yeah. And so it's just like based on the evidence that we provide, do we think that like the world will go more towards democratic reforms or away from democratic reforms?
Yes.
That way.
I think that we've done something that we rarely do. We set this one up well.
Yeah.
That's good definition, good solid structure.
One more thing before we leave the parametricizing of this round. This is not a policy round per se, right? I mean, I was looking at it kind of going, you could, as so many do, turn this into a policy round by just finding some piece of legislation that's this
really
relevant.
In public forum, though, especially in high school.
These kids are doing all kinds of bad things these days.
Yeah, I didn't set it up as I'm setting it up like a fact case, actually.
So I just wanted to clarify. I just wanted to hearken to that point. We've talked about trichotomy and on this podcast in several previous shows. So just reminding you all that this is something that the debate could focus around if someone tries to argue policy, fact, or whatever.
This is like conjecture. It's like I think it 50 years from now there will be more democratic reforms than non-democratic reforms, and it will be because of social media, not just. And so it's like those things are part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Affirmative argument one then. What is the best point that you've got for why social media is beneficial?
Okay.
If everyone's on social media, they're not sending nuclear bombs. Boom, done.
I would argue that the more social media that the United States invests in will influence China to make democratic reforms in the United States.
Leading by example.
Have social media companies that that are allowing giving a voice to Chinese people. You know what I mean? Especially Hong Kong protests and things like that.
Yeah.
That over the long run,
that
will lead to democratic reforms.
Yeah. If we can get American platforms.
Got a lot of details. Yeah. Got a lot
on Chinese phones, then the CIA could have a much easier time overthrowing governments across the world.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Two democratic governments with
values.
So is
your thought just all right, WeChat is only so addictive, and Facebook is only so addictive, and Instagram.
Only people as old as Tim are using Facebook.
So addictive that even the Chinese government's got to get on. Is that the idea? I mean, I'm only 50% joking on that, right? Because it's is the idea that we just make so much social media that ultimately it's unavoidable.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a fair point. The way that I was envisioning saying it is that it's impossible to regulate all of social media forever. That's what they have to do. They have to regulate all of
social media Mark Zuckerberg.
In order for that to happen. Eventually you can't do that. Eventually, there's just the information is just so easy to transfer and to get around your firewalls and stuff like that it will happen, and they will come like the government of the single party China will have to kind of realize is like, we got to make democratic reforms. We can't keep lying about Tiananmen Square.
Yeah, and I think I mean one of the huge advantages of how, in my mind, social media perpetuates democratic values is sharing information by de facto. Like, the more you tell people about the world, the more they're gonna want the things they see in the world. Meaning, if your whole life you never knew about freedom or something like that, and then you find out that there's a bunch of people somewhere else who are not living like you in some condition that you wish you weren't in, that knowledge alone is the driving force between wanting something like that. And I guess I'm not trying to say that democracy is the only great thing in the world, but as far as right now, it seems like freedom, things like that, comes from those ideals, those values tend to perpetuate that. Hopefully, knocking on wood.
So I'd go for social movements.
Yeah, okay.
And there are plenty of arguments to the contrary, like there's, which we can get to, like terrorism or subverting social movements and things. But in general, right, when the whole world is in lockdown, and I think there's like some good COVID arguments to make, but like I think they'll also span beyond and say like even outside of a COVID land, like they still have impact. When the whole world is supposed to be at home and things are totally shut down, the fact that tremendous movements like the biggest protests in U.S. history, or the Black Lives Matter movements that happened this past summer, were organized and orchestrated via social media. Like those stories were published on traditional news channels the same way that those kinds of atrocities have been published on news channels for a long, long time. But these got traction to create, just tremendous magnitude social movements that just forced the whole country to really come to reckon with some things. And that's where like real change, I think if you're talking about, social or political or economic or any kind of change, doesn't come about typically from like a policy and then things happen. Like, yes, the state moves, but grassroots tend to be the things that like spark.
Yeah, the policy is almost a reflection of what the people want before. It's not normally the other way around.
Right, and it's so easy to be super skeptical about that and point to like all the problems why there isn't a policy for it. But even still, when you get down to the core of it, like some of the like laws that we're the most stoked about came about from revolutions and people
forced
being like
change,
freedom of speech and
the sharing of ideas and
100%.
I think like you can trace it back to like the Arab Spring as well, because like
totally, absolutely,
really, I mean, it becomes a really nice story because the Arab Spring kind of emerged like right when social media was just getting its legs. You know what I mean? It was just like you're starting to take steps. You know what I mean? And so. It was crawling, and now it's like, and it's up, and it's just starting to establish itself.
The swamp monsters just growing, infiltrating your children's computers.
But I read. Oh man, I can't even remember where I read the article, but I do remember the premise that was like the first initial sort of democratization of information was like so promising, and then the author of that article said that there's this backslide. And so I think that's where the debate comes in. It's like, did that backslide really happen?
Right? Was it like a trip up and then a little bit back, or are we further than when we started?
We haven't talked about the neg yet, but I mean, look,
I got some good stuff for that.
I mean, let's just start with this fundamental premise that like social media is the spreading of information, which on one hand, it could be used for good in this flowery vacuum we're talking. But you could also share anti-democratic values on social media. Per se, like you could spread like wildfire the exact opposite things. Like there's nothing that says that social media
got a great has been terrific lately. Like, it's just been insane, like how big horrible groups and misinformation and bad things spread too. Like it definitely cuts both ways. One more note before going onto the other side though, and I just wonder if you would feel like this counts in the win column or not. The like voter registration and then voter turnout and voter participation, so actually people casting votes, right? That is generally a measure for how good a democracy is, like what percentage of the population, of the eligible voting population, actually votes. And one could contend that this year, when every single social media platform and news outlet, like everything out there was just blitzing, register to vote, go vote, go vote, go vote, the more that gets propped up on social media, the more eventually people click through and actually participate. So I think if you can show a positive correlation between or a causal link between increased social media use and increased voting turnout and voting participation, I think that's a win for democratic values.
But you could also use social media as a weaponized tool to promote propositions across states that shut down voter registration or make it harder to vote.
Like to Jared's point, though, like is the backslide further, right? Like, so you have millions more people voting this year and like significant percentages voting more this year than ever. And then you have backslides like Georgia, right? With like really gnarly voting rights laws that are passed. And then companies catch wind that like, the viral thing to do these days is to like blow up Georgia and
cough
our stuff and cancel Georgia. So like it pulled so much from it and like had statements against it. So it's almost like it is non-unique across the board, right? Like it's used for good, it's used for evil. Just your tip more.
You're right, and like this is where people need to start quantifying their impacts, right? Even in this background, it's like Georgia is one state. Way more reforms have been happening to ease voting requirements than in this one state, right? It's like those are the ones that make headlines because people are like, "Oh my God, that's anti-democratic,"
or it's egregious or something.
Yeah, so it doesn't represent the majority of reforms that are happening. And secondly, you can make the argument that is like predictably temporary, right? It's like there is no way that that's going to stay that way once like social media like creates an uproar about it. I don't know. At least you can make that
increasing accountability.
Yeah.
All right. So the neg. Now I think we did a good job of painting a rosy picture that we know is just all a complete and utter lie. I do not envy the debaters that lose the coin toss and have to debate the app for this one. So the negative of why social media is the reason that we're all going to die.
Okay, gotta start with criteria.
You're up.
All right, gotta start with criteria again, right? So I had an idea for this one too. I guess it's kind of like a two-part criteria. All right, that oversight boards are inherently anti-democratic, and social media does not work without oversight boards. I don't know how to simplify that into a single criteria, to be honest with you. To be completely honest, I think if I were to prove those two things on the negative, I would win.
Because now you're curating information. It's not democratic if you're being censored, basically, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I wouldn't use the word censored, though, because I reserve that for government policy. I just say oversight boards are anti-democratic.
So this is probably a dumb question, but maybe you can answer it. Does Reddit have restrictions, like things that you're actually not allowed to post on Reddit?
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, there has to be because, like, I was looking into some documentary. It was like looking into 4chan and 8chan and stuff like that. And the difference between them is the level of oversight. That is like the defining difference between these things. Yeah. And that I think now that you say that, it actually kind of strengthens the position that, oversight boards are anti-democratic. Maybe they're good. You don't have to say that's a bad thing. You just say it's anti-democratic. Maybe democracy ain't all that great.
Yeah, I mean that's.
I mean, it's a sham, anyways, right? Like we have no impact whatsoever on like the massive policies and things. Like, well, all right. Here's a maybe direction then at the local level, right? I think you've got the best narrative for democracy happening at a local level because it's so easy to follow the news and be like the president, right? Like. The president doesn't mean anything and is so removed from democracy and so based on like finance and it's like a few swing states. And, like it's just a game that is extremely entertaining for people to watch, but we have practically no say in it at all versus our voice doesn't matter in that race nearly as much as like local ballot initiatives, like who your sheriff is really matters, right? Or, what policies your school board has are going to impact your life in a very real way. Like those kinds of very local policies, I think, are a good, solid narrative of like, this is what democracy really means. Participating in the possibly boring elections, but the ones that you're going to actually bring about, change. And social media brings those to light in some time, like in some ways. Where like, I would contend that Facebook and those other channels are echo chambers, right? Like they really only cycle in people that you kind of agree with. But they do group people like into bubbles generally by like community, or you could argue about similar values and similar, things that you're sharing. And at a local level, that matters because that means that more people participate in the local stuff, like the things that are near them, like Facebook groups, right? I would contend have more impact and probably honestly have more engagement than just the general Facebook wall that be. But like groups are these, small pods of communities that participate. So that seems democratic to me. But yeah, so I mean the whole
when you get to the echo chamber part, that's absolutely essential.
The echo chamber, I think, is such a big argument on the
back. Remember, I think a lot of people think that just means that there's a bunch of people that are all saying the same thing. That's not the only part about an echo chamber. An echo chamber is also like bots and algorithms that are repeating your statement, right, to make it seem like there is more agreement than there really is. And so
actors that do the same thing.
And everything you're saying right now is what I wanted to bring up. At least it falls in line with a very almost case study analysis that's very relevant, applicable to right now. If you believe it, I don't know if you do or not. I mean, that's up to you. But apparently the Russians used social media to subvert democracy very recently. So there's tangible news article evidence you can use on the neg, which you can call to show how social media seems to be the end of everything, because it's just creating, like you're talking about, echo chambers filled with bots and people seeking to undermine the democratic process by making things appear to be more popular than they are, true, or whatever you want to call it.
Demos is supposed to mean people, and social media is filled with a bunch of robots, right? And so you say it's that's not democracy. We're not counting people's opinions. We're counting robots' opinions. You know what I mean? We're counting computers and algorithms. So that's what makes it bad for democracy.
Yeah.
I think that you have a huge angle, particularly in the profit direction of it, right? So the goal of Facebook and the goal of, Instagram and all of these different channels, the goal is not to create a place, whatever, BS rosy image they have.
Yeah.
The goal is to make money. Full stop. Yeah. That is 100% the only reason that they exist. If they didn't make money, they would cease to exist. So those channels, when they're, so financially incentivized to keep people on the platform, that's where the bubbles start to exist. So echo chambers come about because they realize that people bail out of social media when there are opposing viewpoints that are presented. So I think it's a very rosy picture to paint to say but the diversity of people and so many different, different points of view that I get. But Facebook naturally starts to filter more and more of those things out to keep people engaged longer so they can buy, click on more ads and buy more crap. That's what the platform is really built for. And that I would say is not democratic, right?
One last thing I'll say is we want quality citizens, right? Or voters. We want people we don't want people just voting without any knowledge, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
We want not us. Yeah.
We want people to make decisions after they get some information and make a decision on the information and then vote, right? I mean, this is asking a lot, all right? People are on social media. People don't go to their jobs and get fired because of social media, and people can't miss all their college classes because of social media. So I guess what I'm trying to say is on the neg, there's another argument just in the last minute here or whatever, social media, even if it spreads the word of good things, if you're looking on Reddit all day long, just feeding the scroll, and not being a participant in the world, then that is also a reason how social media is maybe not democratic, because people are not, learning about the things going on around them. They're just scrolling with their thumb.
Yep.
All right.
They didn't vote because they're on social media.
Last thing I'll say is my China argument about how they can't crack down forever. I think the neg should just go straight up. Yes, they can.
They just ban your website and then no more problem.
They can do it forever. All right. And the more they do it, the easier it gets. You know what I mean? And the more they do it, the more people believe them. And and so and we can do that, and it happens in the United States, and it happens in Brazil, and it happens in the Philippines.
Are you going to throw your Snapchat tag out here, Tim, or no?
Oh, no, definitely. It's TikTok, but with TALK. I think it's going to be the next big thing. I think this TikTok thing, not so long, but meanwhile, this talk is going to be better.
Yeah.
It's
All
just
right,
me
buddy.
talking, by the way. That's the entire app. So I think it'll take off.
That's our Wednesday. All right. Debate Sensei. We got Matt, Tim, and Jared signing off. See
Take
you
care,
later.
guys.